Hi, I'm Rebecca Ruth, and welcome to Designing with Intention.
I'm excited to chat with you today.
I'm so excited to be here.
Great. So let us kick things off with some kind of intro questions. So
Sure.
what are your favorite places to look for inspiration?
Oh man, it's like a softball right off the bat. I don't know if you want to ask me this right away because I could talk for hours about this. Um,
We get more
so
Clubhouse after, so let's do a summation.
we'll do it quick.
Yeah.
So basically where I like to find my design inspiration is unlike where most anyone finds it. I try to stay off the internet as much as possible so that I can have ethical ideation, basically, which is not stealing. Coming from uncommon inspiration for me looks like travel, fashion, music, books, history, basically real life, getting out and not just being generally inspired, but finding inspiration that can be specifically used. So hopefully that's a very short.
Short summary, and we could definitely dive into that more when we Clubhouse like Q&A session after this. For everybody that's also tuning in, if you want to join that, the link is in my bio for at the end of the interview at 1 Pacific time and 4 Eastern time. We will be hopping over to Clubhouse, so you can join us there after. So in terms of design wise, I know you love like classic book titles. And so what classic book titles would you love to design a cover for?
Okay, so I really like I could design book covers forever and never get tired of it. So, but yes, classics are my favorite. I'd really like to do like a bunch of series designs. So whether that be primarily wrapped around either an author probably or maybe a series of books that are always maybe read in high school or college that are like the classics that everyone needs to have on their bookshelf. I would really love to design a Tolkien series, not just like The Lord of the Rings, but also The Hobbit, Beren and Luthien, The Silmarillion, like the whole geeky kingdom. Chronicles of Narnia. I'm a huge Hemingway fan. F. Scott Fitzgerald, George Orwell, H.G. Wells, those are all kind of like my niche of things that I really enjoy. Shakespeare, I'm already in the process of planning doing on my own. There's a lot of really cool things in the public domain that I can potentially do, but it would be really great to be able to do it with like a book publisher. That would be really, really incredible.
That does, yeah. I agree. That is pretty amazing thing to have that connection. Actually see it out there in the world and not just be like that passion project.
Mm-hmm.
What about in terms of also, I know you love music. So what would be some bands or singers that you would love to do their next album cover?
Uh, I'm a huge Weezer fan. So I love me some Weezer. There's a band called Reliant K that I've been following since I was in high school. There's a French Canadian band called Pamplemousse that I really love. Um, Bands like Bastille or Sylvan Esso, they're sort of like off the beaten path, but also like Goo Goo Dolls. I've been a huge Goo Goo Dolls fan like my entire life. So there's like the could never happen, but would be super fun, and like some of the
Oh,
smaller artists that are like really fun to think about.
yeah, that's a good list. I like that list. And then in terms of color psychology, what colors do you think best describe your personality?
So not my brand, but my personality. So red off the bat is probably the one that describes my personality the best. Passionate, motivating, adventurous, dynamic. I'm very big into color psychology and everything that I do. So this is a pretty easy answer for me. Yellow, which is also a part of my brand, or which is, red is not. Whimsical, energizing, sociable, if I may be so bold, intelligent, I would hope. And black and white, but primarily black because Black holds so much duality. Like it can be classic and modern. It can be avant-garde and, you know, it can be confident. It just has this dual nature that I really love. And that is something that I do incorporate into my brand because that is something that I am drawn to. That is something that's very much how I work. I pair the creative with, you know, the sort of woo-woo creative with like the down-to-earth, like nitty-gritty process. And so a lot of that part of my personality does translate really literally into my brand. So those would probably be the three that I would say are the most like my personality.
Okay, that's a good list. I like those together. Good together too. Like it's a good color palette in general.
It's a power palette.
Yeah.
Leatrice Eisman from Pantone would say, so whatever that says.
And then when you were a kid, what did you think you wanted to do when you grew up?
After I got through my bus driver phase, because I just really liked my bus driver, I wanted to be a business card maker, which that was at 10 years old that I decided that. Didn't figure out till later that it was actually graphic design. So I've wanted to do this for basically my entire life.
Impressive that you kind of had that inclination and such a specific.
I know. I don't. So rare. That's
Yeah.
another word that would probably describe me. I'm unusual. There's also that.
Yeah. Well, it's good to be unique, I think, in this world. We need more uniqueness, right?
We are all unique. We just need to learn how to tap into it.
Yeah. So, in terms of like growing up, how do you feel like your parents, like what role did they play in kind of cultivating your creativity and your artistic talents?
Yeah, so I was always creative, but I actually really believe that everybody starts out creative. Like every child, if given a crayon, is going to do something creative with it. I think that there's like this crazy idea that like some people are creative and some people are not. And I really disagree with that. I think it's just that we're all creative in different ways. But I was more artistically creative. And so, you know, my mom is a drummer, so she's creative, but she's also like a PE teacher and a physical therapy person, and she does stuff with special needs kids. And my dad owns his own construction company, which is called Ortega Concepts, and he is a concept-driven designer builder. So he's not just a builder. And so I think seeing, you know, creativity in music and seeing how my dad, you know, was able to read plans and draw plans and come up with, you know, color palettes for homes and all of those things was like an example to me, but also they were really supportive. So no matter what I was interested in, they got me art lessons with a friend of the family, and my grandmother was actually a really amazing painter, so I also took art lessons with her over the years. And so they were very supportive, but they also wanted me to explore other things. So like they wanted me to try and learn piano, and I wasn't a fan. My dad worked extra jobs because we were very poor growing up. And so my dad worked extra jobs to get whatever the things were that we needed. He worked extra jobs to get the piano that I never played. So there's that. But, you know, they were supportive. They always pushed me to just be me and not try and make me somebody I wasn't, much to my mom's dismay of wearing mismatched socks and all those things to church. It was like, my dad said, just let her do her, 'cause she's going to want to do it anyway. And I think that really like boosts your creative confidence when you are just allowed that freedom.
Mm-hmm. I love that. That's great. I love that support. And then do you have any particularly vivid memories involving your love of the arts, like early on in your childhood?
So my dad is an avid art collector. He would often, you know, whether it was, you know, trading his services for things for me, sometimes, you know, because I grew up near Santa Fe, New Mexico, which is a huge art community, and it has been for a long time. And so a lot of his clients were, you know, upper class people that could afford to build a home and stuff like that. So often he would do part of his trade for art. So our house my parents' house still looks like a gallery. Like it's just filled with art. So seeing that that was like something he was willing to invest in was like an interesting thing to me at the time. I didn't realize what that meant until later. My dad also took me to Take Your Daughter to Work Day when I was 10, and that is when I found out I wanted to be a business card maker, because he was remodeling a law firm on the lower level of a building, and there was a, now I know, graphic design business running upstairs, but they also like had a mini print studio where they would like print business cards, small runs. And so when I saw them doing that, I was like, they're making business cards. That's what I want to do. That looks really cool. And it wasn't even cool. Like it was just a card with a name on it, right? This is 1991. So it was not exciting, cool, die cut, colorful, anything. But I was just so intrigued by like the process and watching it happen, which, come to think of it, process was in me since then, apparently. So yeah, I still love to do art. I always loved finding abstract painting and trying to, put meaning into it and figure out, like, because when it's not abstract, if it's just a picture of a horse, like there's not much you can really infer about that. But when it's abstract and you get to kind of pull your own meaning out of it, like I really enjoyed doing that. And so I still enjoy painting abstracts. That's something that it's one of the only things that I do that doesn't have a really clear process. I don't look for inspiration for that. That's something where I just sit down with my feelings and paint. And that is really the only place I think that feelings have in this sort of a thing that I do, is when it's art for art's sake, not when it's art for solving problems like graphic design is supposed to be.
Right. That's I do love, I love that separation too, that like you could really pour yourself into your creative side projects, and then you can, do the problem solving things for your clients more. And then with now, like, how your journey kind of continues, like how did those experiences from your childhood and teenage years, do you think, how did they influence you in deciding where you wanted to go to school and what you wanted to study?
So I've always been very ambitious. In high school, I played a lot of sports, and I was captain of the basketball team and the volleyball team, and I wanted to run track just so I could get a little pin on my jacket. And so I always wanted to like be really successful. But at that time, like I didn't know what that meant as a designer. And so when you're right out of high school, you sort of start thinking about, okay, well, what's like a prestigious art school, and apply to all those things, even though I have no idea like what is going to happen. I got accepted to 3 of the major ones. There was one in Chicago, one in Denver, and one in California. But after graduation, I decided to stay in New Mexico with my longtime boyfriend at the time, and save some money and do the core basics at a local community college. And eventually, after some crazy times, he ended up proposing, and we ended up staying here. So as far as like deciding, my life kind of decided for me. There was only really one design school here in New Mexico at the time, which, thanks to COVID, shucks, is closed now. But I ended up going to the Art Center Design College here in Albuquerque and getting my bachelor's from there. And, it was sort of a crazy thing, because I was also looking at doing modeling for fun, and I had already gone to Palm Springs to do some of that in those same years, and realized that I really liked the other side of this fashion industry. I loved the clothes. I loved magazines. Like I literally had probably a 4x2 giant box filled with fashion magazines that I had been saving like my whole teenage years, and was like, this is design. This like merges my love of things. And so I was really looking at, okay, I'm gonna not do the actual modeling. I want to be on this side of the camera, on this side of the creative thing. So that was sort of another like little tick into something that I would eventually learn to love, which was publishing design. And I had to take 7 years doing doing design school because, you know, it's expensive. Private art college is expensive. And so I was a bank teller during that time, which is like the least creative job you could possibly have. But it allowed me to be able to really focus all of my free time and my nights and weekends and things like that to getting my degree. And I was actually able to graduate valedictorian, eight and a half months pregnant or something like that with my daughter. And so it was a really proud time. During those 7 years, though, I was doing design work and I had an internship, and there was a lot. I always tell people, just because you haven't graduated, or just because even if you're not being paid for your work, experience is experience. So I say that I've been doing graphic design for 20 years because I started actually creating design work for myself or for other people in 2001. So this is like year 20, which is just bonkers.
I know, it's a little crazy, right?
So old.
No. You're just getting, you know, into the good stuff, right?
Right.
You know, I think a lot of people constantly are in that path too, where they have to also work and go to school. But I think there's a lot of value in that, a lot of value in diversifying your knowledge, experience. And there's a lot of things that you can learn from doing jobs like being a bank teller or a person or whatever.
Yeah, learning how to talk to people.
There's so much that you can do. And also dealing with customer service complaints and things like that.
It's a lot. Yeah.
So I think they're definitely all valid skills that can contribute to you on the path as a designer. So going back to like being in school, did you have any instructors that like left you know, lasting impact on you and your career?
Absolutely. So after I did my basics, I was only ever planning on getting a 2-year degree. The 2-year degree they offered at the time was called advertising art, which was basically graphic design. And it was just an associate's. And that was like the extent of my aspirations. I figured I would have everything I needed, and I didn't have the money to do more than that. And close to being done with that, I was approached by one of my professors. His name is Joe, and he basically was like, "Look, I know this is all you've pretty much figured you were going to be here for this long, but I really think that you have just like so much more. You have so much potential. Your skills are, you know, the way you think and your skills just need to be pushed a little bit more. I don't think that it would be good for you to leave at this point." And so I talked to my husband at the time, and we said, you know, it's going to take a little while. Like, I'm going to have to take a break for a couple of years to save up and go back. But I decided that I would go back for my bachelor's, and it was the best decision that I could have made in that time. I ended up taking a lot of different sorts of classes that I hadn't had access to, like art history, but art history and psychology, which was like a huge like thing in how I work now. I was talked to a lot more about, like, it was just a creative brief, but things that I was introduced to that now I use and have kind of restructured and completely redone and made my own. But it was during those years and with certain instructors that I was able to really catch on to the things that made my work different, that made my process different. Looking back, I see that now. I don't think I realized it at the time. I was just learning and grabbing and going and working. But after graduating, and once I was in an art director position, which I'm sure we'll get to at some point, I was like, oh, this works, and I can make this my own and help and teach other people and build a team around this idea. And so they were absolutely crucial in teaching me the importance of sketching, especially sketching and process and strategy. And it's just basically the foundation for everything that I do at this point.
Yeah. I think it's great to have those teachers out there that encourage you and like push you to achieve more, basically.
Yeah.
glad that you had that in your in one of your professors.
Yeah, and we're still friends, which is awesome. We're like peers now. I actually got asked to go back and teach at some point at the same school, and we were teaching in separate rooms, and it was sort of like bizarre but amazing.
Awesome. And then so after you graduated, where did your path kind of take you from there?
Oh, goodness. Okay, so right after I graduated, I had my daughter within like a month after I graduated. So I took about 4 months off. Before that, my junior year, I had an internship at a small design firm called Bad Dog Design. I was initially only supposed to be an intern, but my skills were enough that she ended up hiring me and paying me. So it only was an internship for maybe about a month, and then I worked like as a junior designer for some months until I got pregnant with my daughter. And so after graduation, I was having a really hard time because I wanted to stay home with my daughter, and I had already made the agreement that my husband and I that I had the degree, so I was going to be the one to work. And so it was really hard to like do that. But after those 4 months, we moved out of Santa Fe and moved into Albuquerque, where a really good friend of mine who I had been working with at as merch manager for the largest Christian music festival in the state for, at that time, it was probably only about 3 years, 2 or 3 years. But he knew I was a graphic designer. He liked my work, and he said that there was a really small but good opportunity at the church where he went. So there's a lot of large churches here in New Mexico, and one of them had all sorts of things. So it had 3 radio stations, a skate park, about 30 different mini ministries, which were basically their own businesses for all intents and purposes, a coffee shop, a bookstore. It was a lot of things. But what the job was for me was called a web graphics designer. I'm not a web designer. And so I was like, I don't know about this. So I went in for the interview, and they said that it was basically creating banner images and thumbnails for various things across all of their sites, as well as being like an alleviating designer for the quote unquote art department. And that'll make sense when I get to it later. But so I was like, okay, I guess I need a job. Like, I'm supposed to be working. My husband's going to stay home with baby, and this is going to be good. So I did. And I was able to convince through a big proposal and all sorts of things that happened. The current art director that was there left, and his position opened up. I had only been graduated 8 months by this time, 8 or 9 months. And I was, you're all full of confidence, right? So I was like, I could be art director. That's my dream job.
Yeah.
It's open. I'm going to just, what's the worst they can say? No. So what's that?
That like invincibleness of like.
Yeah. Your early 20s. Yeah. So I guess that early, I was like 25. So I applied, and because I knew how their art department works, they were basically farming out all of the stuff. So the art director there was basically a project manager. He wasn't really designing very many things. He was just the kind of go-between for the ad agencies around town that they were giving jobs to. So I basically told the manager that I was working under, like, with a big proposal, you know what, here's all the money we're spending with all these ad agencies. If we were to bring that in, here's like, we could actually build a team here, and here's all the different ways we can save on print costs and production and like all of these other things. And I got the job. And so in the 3.5 years that I was there, I was able to build up the team to, not including myself, about 6 people, including junior designers, and interns, and basically brought everything in-house that they were doing out of house, saved tons of money. And it really was like the dream for a while, because I was doing branding, I was managing and designing for 3 different magazines, and got to rebrand a radio station like from the ground up, and work with so many different kinds of things. Just right out of college, which was just unheard of. And I just felt very blessed to be able to do that. Book covers, I actually got to design some book covers that were published. And yeah, 3.5 years felt like a lifetime, but I left after 3.5 years and wanted to start my own thing. So that's like some of it.
I think that's such an important thing too, is like, we talk about like that confidence of out of school, or even like the confidence that you have when you're a kid, and just going for it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's so important to, like, even if you don't think you're fully qualified, there are people out there that are going to be way less qualified than you and are going to go for it. So just put yourself out there. I think
yeah. Just be okay with hearing no. You have to, like, I'm okay if this is no.
Exactly. I love that. So in going out on your own, kind of how did that shape your career from there?
So after that, I went out on my own and was working at the Apple store. Funny enough, the friend that got me the job at as an art director in that whole place left to go do his own thing and started working at Apple. He's a music producer, so that's like what he does. So he was a genius at Apple for about, I don't know, maybe like a year by the time I left. And I was like, hey, I need like something part-time. And so basically Apple only hires by referral. So
Okay.
Someone that already works there has to refer you, and then you still have to go through the interview process. So he referred me, went through the whole thing, and I got hired there. I was working at Apple part-time for about 9 months. So that was in 2011 to 2012. And all of this time, since about 2008, I had been sort of freelancing on the side under this business name, Epiphany Design, because I thought it was super cute and clever. And, oh, I had an epiphany. But realized later that my name is really unique. And the way that I work isn't about having epiphanies. It's not about having like these random lightning strikes of inspiration. It's actually about being able to plan that out and make it happen. Like, I can make lightning strike. I don't need to wait for it. Yeah. And so I thought I switched my business name to BrandiSea Design. It's now BrandiSea Design Co. because I do a lot of things and it's not just designing anymore. Mm-hmm. I was doing a lot of branding, and that's sort of like the easy go-to, right, when you're first starting out, especially on your own, is everyone needs brand, everyone needs a logo. But at that time, I was still doing primarily logos. Like, it wasn't a full brand thing. I wasn't doing just delivering a logo. It was still a logo and colors and like other assets and deliverables, but it was primarily just logos. And I started to really get frustrated because I had a lot of experience, and this was coming off of being an art director, right? So I'm like, I'm not just some slacker like with Photoshop. Like, these are my prices. And it was right around the time that Fiverr just started, and so I was getting a lot of clients who would come to me saying like, why does it cost so much? Like, I just need a logo. Like, it's simple. I don't need anything complicated. And I'm like, first of all, simple costs more. Besides the point.
Right.
But also, I mean, this is what I cost. You're not paying me for my hours. You're paying me for my experience, for my expertise. And so I just got really frustrated with that question. So I thought, you know what? Maybe if I give them the benefit of the doubt, maybe they really just don't understand. Maybe they think there's like a magic design button that you just press and go, blah, like, here's your pretty thing. So I decided I'm going to write down in a like nice PDF document that I can hand to a client, say like, basically, here's where we met and here's your finished design, and tell them the steps. Mm-hmm. Thinking of it now, it's like probably overkill, and they probably don't really care ultimately, but I wanted them to see everything that's involved. Like, here is what you are paying for. You are not just paying for, I met with you, give me a logo. And so that was very much sort of the process for me of getting better clients. It helped me develop a better brief and starting out with this idea of, strategy in a freelance world, because I already knew how to do that in an in-house environment where no one's needing to buy from me. They just come to me when they need something because we all work there and they just put their name on the list or whatever. And so it was a very different mindset. So even though those processes had always been there and I was teaching them to people that I worked with as an art director and working with that, it was sort of a different thing that I had to move towards to do that in a freelance. I need to actually make money from this person sort of environment. So writing down your process is like the first step to improving it and being better. And so that was definitely like a turning point for me.
Yeah. I think it's so important because I do think that a lot of people just think like it's boop, poof, and that it happens, and they don't really understand all that it takes to go into it, but also all the education. It's kind of like you go to a lawyer and you pay a certain amount because they have educated themselves on the law and you are trusting them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like the same thing with going to anybody that has any kind of training like that, is that you are coming to them to trust them for their expertise and their experience doing something. So I completely.
Right. It's just so devalued for people that do that in a creative profession, because in people's minds, it's not the same and they don't really need it like they might need a mechanic or a lawyer. So it's a lot harder of a sell.
But it's also, it is so important. Like it is way more important than a lot of people give it value for. And
totally
look at what good design is versus what is not the best design. You can see like those strong brands and how they stick out with so much, like, everything from like you're talking about the fashion magazines to any kind of a product that has good branding and good design and good advertisements. Like that all feeds into them making good sales. So yes,
absolutely,
it's so important.
Yeah.
And yes, it drives me a little crazy about how valued the art industry is, and hence the series. So
right, yes.
Yeah. And I know that part of that is what kind of inspired you with getting into the blog. Like, can you talk more about like, because you have a blog, you have a YouTube channel and a podcast. So you're hitting all of those fields with information, getting that information out there, helping educate people, from the designers to the people that are looking for designers. I would love to hear like kind of like what inspired you with all of that, and kind of how you think about like the content strategy for handling all those things, because I know a lot of people get overwhelmed with that content planning and they're like, I can't do all of the things, because it's like they think of everything as like its own individual thing. So I would love for you to talk about how you manage all of those things.
Okay, so the first question was like, what inspired me to start the blog? And it's obviously all connected. So the blog to the YouTube channel and the podcast. So I guess I've sort of become an expert at trying to turn my negative feelings into something else, because the thing that got me on the path with being better with clients was the frustration with clients. And the next frustration was, okay, I'm getting some good clients, but first of all, I wasn't charging enough, even though they thought it was expensive. So that's like a sidebar. But the second thing was I just needed more clients. Like I really needed it. I had just come off of a divorce, and I was living on my own, and it was like really hard to like make ends meet. And so I was just seeing a bunch of designers that I knew locally that were absolutely stealing designs just from the internet and making them theirs, that were charging like $100 for a logo. And I'm just like, okay, why are they getting all of these jobs? Like not very humbly, but like, I'm better than this and I'm not getting the work, but they are, and it must be because they're cheap. And so I was just getting really like into sort of a dark place. And, decided, well, again, what if I take a step back and try and give them the benefit of the doubt? And maybe, like, I just couldn't get it through my head that they were doing this on purpose, because that just sounds like evil. It was just evil to me that they would be doing this on purpose. I'm like, maybe they just don't know. Like, maybe they don't know that you can't Google, you know, I don't know, Alice in Wonderland logo and then just copy that and put it on someone's business. Like, maybe they just don't know it's not okay. So I took that frustration and started writing a blog. And this was in 2014. No, let's see, 13, 14, somewhere in there. And started really publishing in 2015. And basically just addressing things that I was frustrated with, whether it was, you know, charging so little, or copying things, or any of those things, small tips and things like that. After about a year of doing that, so before that, I was pregnant with my son. I got remarried and was pregnant with my son, and I was working a publication job. So I was like a publication director. And so I got to work on some more magazine type stuff. And while I was doing that, there was a little bit of writing involved. And so that sort of, again, propelled me towards like more writing. And the blog started to be read by people. And I had a good few people that were friends of mine, and then some random people that were like, you should do a YouTube channel, because I was writing long form blogs, but then I was also every Tuesday doing something called Design Tip Tuesday, which was literally a paragraph. It's basically what I write every day now on captions for Instagram. It was like that small, but it was just it was meant to just be a quick tip. And I started doing that because that was like a day that I needed time with my kid more. And so it was like, I can't do more than a paragraph today. So I'm just going to do a quick tip, like something I don't have to look for research on. Like, it's just something I know. And that was the thing that people kept saying, like, you should do a YouTube channel. You could just do design tips. And I was like, yeah, I don't really feel like I want to do video stuff. I have, you know, so I talked to my husband about it. He's a video producer, and he was like, yeah, we could do that in our sleep. I'm like, you could do that in your sleep. I have not done this before. So I decided a year after officially doing the blog to turn those design tips into videos on YouTube. And I did that consistently for another year. And then right in between that time, I got a call back from the school where I graduated from, asking me if I would like to teach. And I was, again, I just, every time I get these things, I'm like, I haven't thought about that. I'm not a teacher. And now I know where that was headed. But they wanted me to teach advanced design concepts to juniors and seniors, which, how could I say no to that? Like, that is like where my heart is creating concepts. And so I was part-time faculty for a few years. And that was part of where I was working on these videos. After about a year, I was getting frustrated again, because I was still in this place that you and I just talked about, which is people don't value what we do. Like, I am getting really great clients now. Like, that's no longer a problem. I don't feel like I had by this point separated myself completely from the kind of designer that works on Fiverr and Upwork and that kind of thing for $100 logo, even locally. And the kind of work I was doing, it was like, I can't be mad at them. Mm-hmm. That's their business. Like, that's their niche. If they want to do $500 logos, I'd rather just do 2 and make the same money. And we have different people. And so I was able to separate that. But now it was like, just the world in general doesn't get what I do. Like, even my mom says I'm a graphics designer. That's not even a thing, Mom. Like, I've been doing this for a long time. It's not a thing. So I talked to my sister, my adopted sister, and basically she and I talked about it, and she wasn't a designer. She's not a designer. And she basically was like, well, what if I bring questions like from a non-designer's point of view, and you can answer them from your perspective, and we can sort of hit on these things, these frustrations that you have, like why does design cost so much and all of these things. And so we started Design Speaks podcast in February of 2017 with the premise that it was conversations about design from a non-designer being answered by a design professional. And that was really where I found like what I love to, like, I don't know if anyone can tell, I love to talk, and I love to talk about design. And so being able to do that back and forth with someone was like everything. So I stopped writing the blog actively. I was only writing a blog post like every 6 months, because a lot of that writing was going into content for the podcast. But I was also able to like repurpose the topic, like the popular posts that I had that were blog posts, those turned into some YouTube stuff. And then I was able to use the feedback and the insight from those things and create podcast topics. Over the 3 years that Michelle and I were co-hosting together, she actually ended up getting a job with my husband as a production assistant on his video team. And after 3 years, there's only so many questions you can ask. So she stopped being like a regular human being, is what we would say. And there wasn't a lot for her to ask. And she actually wanted to start doing other things. And so she stepped down as co-host. And in, I guess 2019, I started over with a new co-host. And I changed up the format completely to be more focused on my audience now, which is creative professionals, niched down even more so like an in-house or a freelance designer, graphic designer. And so over the past couple of years, that's sort of been the niche for that. So as far as like creating content and reusing that, like I always say that like start with words in regards to my process, but I can't take credit for this particular saying. It all starts with writing is something I got from a podcaster and a really incredible guy named Sean West. And his thing is what kind of propelled me also. And if you write, then you have stuff to video about, then you have stuff to talk about, then you have stuff to post to social media about. And it's kind of this incredible waterfall that I'm currently drowning in because I have too much content. I don't know what to do with all of it. But does that answer your question? That was a really long answer.
But the funny thing is, I love that when they approached you about teaching, you're like, I don't know if I'm a teacher, but the whole reason of creating all of these things, I want to educate people. So it's kind of funny that you're
like, I don't teach. What are you talking about?
So yeah, I kind of love that. But clearly, like, you kind of embrace that with like some of the other things that you're working on. So we'll get to that a little bit. But so what topics are you going to move into? Because I know you've had change up with the podcast too. Like, what are you planning on moving into coming into this next season of the podcast?
So much to my chagrin, my newest co-host also had to step down. She is an adventure elopement photographer, and after COVID restrictions were lifted, she was crazy busy, and she travels. Like she's an adventure elopement photographer, so she like travels everywhere to take pictures. And she was like, I'm not able to commit to recording, and so I am currently co-host less. I have some things in the works possibly, but there's a really good chance it's going to be just me for a little while in the beginning. I don't want to put too much pressure on myself or pressure on anybody that I'm talking to feel like they have to rush into it, because it is not a small role to have to plan and be prepared and to record and to be willing to now since the pandemic, I started videoing since it's so easy to do over Zoom, because we were recording over Zoom, the podcast. So it's on audio and I upload the video to YouTube as well. So that sort of took the place of my old design tips. because I kind of let that go to the wayside. My husband got real busy at work and he wasn't able to produce them, and I'm not going to do that. So the podcast has been my primary, like, and that's what I love anyways. So it wasn't like a huge thing of letting go. So at this point, all of my topics are sort of up in the air, depending on if it's something I need to talk about on my own, or if it's something that, because topics will definitely change depending on whether I'm going to need banter and feedback. So some things that I want to talk about are ethical ideation, how to actually use the inspiration you find. I think that a lot of people see that I talk about finding inspiration offline and like all this stuff, but that's literally not, like, that's only the start. My process and the way that I work actually shows you how, like, what to do with it. Like, I don't just want people to go out and be generally inspired. Like, there is ways to go out and find specific inspiration, like you would do on Pinterest, except in the real world and not looking at other people's design work. How to handle rejection, which is something we were just talking about a little bit, like being okay with hearing no. How to practice active observation. And I haven't talked a lot in a while about like some of my favorite design books and like design resources on creativity. So those are some things that I'm toying with. I have tons of content that I could repurpose if I needed to. Share some interviews that I've done that maybe people have never heard, things like that. So we'll see. I'm cutting it short here. Podcast next season is supposed to start on September 13th. So it'll all be a surprise to everyone.
Even you, maybe.
Even me. It's possible.
Yeah. And then so we talked briefly about like that you went into creating your own course, and like what you loved about teaching was that it was all about the ideation kind of part of design. So what inspired you to kind of take like your personal process that you use, that you call like a strategic design process, and turn it into a course? And like, can you go over kind of like a little bit more of what the course entails?
Yeah. So what inspired me to do the course? So when I guess it started early. So I talked about when I was art directing that I was able to like share my process, and because I was the boss, basically require the designers to work in a certain way, not impeding on their own creative process, but there were like certain milestones that they needed to hit. So like I always needed to see a brief. I always had to see sketches. I wanted to see their style references, which is what I call them, not inspiration. Style references and inspiration are not the same thing. And so on and so forth. So there was like these certain milestones. So I think that's where it started, getting into my head that this was something that like I could use with a team. But it wasn't until I started teaching design concepts at the college that I realized that this is something that not only I can work with someone on a team, but like I can teach someone this process from start to finish, like actually have them do my process, learn my process, and then from there be able to pull from it what they need for their own process. So first, because you're a student and I can tell you, you need to do this, like replace everything you're doing with this, and I promise you it will work. And then they can step back and go, do I like all of this? Do I like some of this? And the majority of them would take one or two key things, which were the only key things that I felt like they should take anyway. And then the rest of the process was theirs for, editing. So that was another thing. So over time, I realized that it is very step driven. And I started to talk about it first on the blog. I wrote about it on the blog. I did a separate blog post for each of the steps. And I was also able to use it in a create-a-thon. Do you know what create-a-thon is?
I think we talked.
We might have talked about it. So anyways, Create-a-thon, for those who don't know, is a 24-hour creative sprint, basically, where a bunch of designers get together in teams and do work for nonprofits that can't otherwise afford design. So it could be marketing, it could be a website, it could be branding. And this was like the ultimate test for me of this process, because it was like, not only me being on a time crunch, which is always the case as designers, right? With clients, you're always on time crunch, but I already know how to manage my own time. But this was, can this process work with a team on a 24-hour time crunch to get something absolutely delivered and handed over, because it had to be done. And so I did that with a team. I want to say there was like 10 of us, and it worked. And so then the next blog post was Trust the Process. And it was all about creating, like, it was basically just a case study of what happened in these 24 hours. And that was like another thing of like, okay, this is something that I can teach people to do that have never done it before, that have never even met me. And over time, I started talking about it on the YouTube channel. And then I did individual episodes on the podcast about each step, and kept hearing from people, can you talk more about how to do this specifically? Can you talk more about the word map and how that works to find concepts? And so I was just getting questions, and it wasn't an overwhelming amount, but it was enough that I was like, okay, I thought I was teaching this, but obviously I can't really go into like the nitty gritty of every step on a podcast, and it's visual anyways, the way I work. So it was like a little bit of a disconnect, and I didn't want to have to make a YouTube video. And I was really in the process of trying to figure out some passive income. So I thought, okay, all of these things, Venn diagram happy here in the course area. So like, why would I not do this? So for about a year, I was writing the content. I tried to work with Skillshare to do it with them, and I just wasn't feeling it. I didn't really love their business model, and decided I was going to do it on my own sort of platform. And so my husband sat with me and helped me organize my content, and I did a module on each step. There's tons of like bonus content, and it's a 4-hour, 12 module course. And I call it the Strategic Process Essentials, because even at 4 hours, that's like the basic of what you would need. There's like so much nuance in each one that if you really want to deep dive, at this point, I'm having people do one-on-one coaching with me. Eventually, I would really like to do a masterclass with a group of people so that we can go through real projects together and see exactly how this works in the real world. So the course goes through all of the steps, from how to meet with a client to get the right things that you need from them. It is how to like have a place to always start, which is like the absolute key, because if you're not feeling creative, well, what then? Well, we don't always feel creative. Like we're being paid to be creative. Nobody cares if we feel like being creative. And going on a walk and having a cup of coffee, like, is not always going to work. So this process gives you the tools that you need to be able to be what I call creative on demand. And so it is the entire process. It is how to use the word map to concept to find the things you need for your design, how to best use your time for sketching. I have specific playlists for every step in the process that are actually well researched for the kind of music that's going to help you work best in those stages. So when you do start that music at some point in the future, you already put your brain into the right mode, so you can literally just sit down and be creative. You don't have to wait to get into a certain place. So sketching and research is another huge part, how to research and how to find inspiration. So the bonus thing that I've never taught outside, like on an official capacity outside of this course, is how to find and use your uncommon inspiration. So if I do that on a podcast episode, it's going to be the first time outside of the course that I even like go into exactly how that works.
Right.
So, yeah, there's so much in it, and I'm really proud of it. It's in bite-sized pieces, each lesson, not including like the stuff you do outside of it, but each lesson's between 15 and 30 minutes long. So or actually 6 minutes, I think, is the shortest video. So it's really easy to follow, and I've gotten really great feedback from it. So it's sort of like my baby that I don't talk enough about right now.
It sounds amazing. So you should talk about it. You should. It's a good baby.
I know. It's a beautiful baby. Very colorful.
Yeah. And then we only have a couple minutes left, but we are going to jump on to Clubhouse right after this.
Yes,
I wanted to ask like a final question of like how the pandemic has affected your business overall, and like where do you see it moving forward? I know you mentioned the coaching, but like what are all the pieces that you would like to see with moving forward?
Yeah, so the pandemic really tempered a lot of my general design client work. I was working with an advertising agency, being contracted out regularly, and they lost their stuff, so I lost a lot of that business. I was already in the process of kind of shifting my business over into the coaching sphere when the pandemic hit. So it actually came at an okay time, and I was already in the process of working on the course. So while like general client stuff slowed down, developing content, whether it was for the course or for my Instagram or whatever, and coaching actually like went up. So it sort of balanced out on my time. Yeah.
So what do you want to really focus on going forward now?
I have a hard time with that. I'm one of those people that wants to do a lot of things all of the time, and there's only one of me.
Dreams. What are the big dreams?
I'm already in the process of talking with a book publisher about writing a book about my process and creativity and inspiration. That's a huge thing for me, and I know that that's going to take a few years. So like that's like always in the back of my mind. I would love to have a larger course on the process, as well as some mini courses on just creating concepts, on just color psychology, on just research for the people that don't feel like they want to learn the entire thing, to just be able to go like a la carte. Like I would like to learn how to do this and put it into my process. So creating more courses, and really my dream at the moment right now is to just figure out a way to organize all of this content that I have, from like a lot of content, into some sort of machine that I can spit it out in bite-sized things without having to search everywhere for like a topic. So I'm not super organized. Like I'm not great in the process. I am outside of that. I'm like, okay, it could be on a Post-it. It could be in here. It could be in my Evernote. Where is that thing that I did the other day?
Oh, geez. Yeah.
So my dream is organization. Let's just say that.
I love organization, so we can talk more about that.
Okay.
So thank you so much for doing this today. I'm excited to continue this conversation on Clubhouse. So we're going to hop over there after this. So thank you so much, Brandi. This has been great.
Thank you for asking really great questions. And I probably was long-winded, and we probably didn't get to all of them, but it's okay. That's what Clubhouse is for. Thank you, everybody, for joining. I hope some of you can visit us over on Clubhouse.
Yeah. See you in a little bit. Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye.